Morning, everyone. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for the invite to be here today. So just a little bit about me to begin with. Started my career off at Tesco PLC and then moving on to Tesco Bank, but now currently at Modular. So at Tesco PLC, I was in that kind of service delivery environment. That's where I first started off my career. At Tesco Bank, I then went to be the bane of the life of the service delivery people by delivering change. And now at Modular, I'm responsible for both sides of those coins. So it's been a real interesting journey through various different sizes of companies, and hopefully today I'll be able to take you through a bit of value in some of those drivers and levers for what I've picked up from managing service delivery over the years. So what are the main challenges that I've really come across and really seen and I think resonate with a few people in terms of that service delivery that picked up over the years? Revenue is one of those key North Star things for any company, especially startups. They have to focus on that revenue. But revenue can lead to a number of those tactical decisions that you need to make to get through that. Tactical isn't necessarily bad. We don't need to see tactical as bad, but we need to be intentional about it, because if we're not intentional, we can start growing that operational debt. And many of you in the room that lead some of those BAU support teams will know about their growing operational debt. But then if priority is driven by revenue, how do you actually put a figure on that operational debt so that you can prioritize it and fix it? And many of us have been in that situation before. We don't know how to get out of that. And trying to find that space to be intentional and ensure your team's not drowning are some of the difficult challenges that I've seen a lot of others face, than I've faced over the year, and also that I've caused over the year. I'll put my hand up to that as well. So today we'll be talking through a few points in terms of on the agenda. It's not improving things that shouldn't be there. How do you continue to serve an organization whilst you adapt? Risk and audit, make them your best friends. Technology to be accelerate, and being a victim. So I'm going to start with that last point of being a victim, and obviously the slide kind of gives away where I'm going with this, but the frustration that you can feel when you're in an operational team, when delivery teams and project teams just throw things over the fence at you, and you are the ones that have to pick it up, and you're the ones that deal with it, and you're left with it, and you just have that anger and frustration of not being able to deal with that. But is that really the case? Or is it a case of how easy is it to procrastinate and blame because we don't actually know where to start to fix that problem? On any task that we do, how much easier is it when we know the what, the why, the how, and the when? So if we know that in terms of these are the elements that make things easy, what responsibility have you taken to actually make that happen, for you to know the what, the why, and the how, and when, to make things better for you in your teams? One of the great quotes that I've been living by recently is that when you start to take responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you tap into the power to have, you can change anything in your life. Now, this is a quote from Hal Elrod in the book The Miracle Morning, and so highly recommend having a read of that as well, but it really resonated to me this year. There's so many times where I've wanted to blame others, but then looking at this quote, it's actually looking inward. And actually, is it actually that you're more upset with yourself for allowing things to happen and not actually taking the energy and the drive to change things and own it and take responsibility, and instead playing the victim, because it's easy to play the victim, but is it actually the right thing to do? It's on us as leaders to be coaching left, right, up, down, into how to actually affect that change, how that we can work collaboratively, how you can make the project teams understand that what they're delivering is output, not outcomes. An outcome for the company will be how you solve that whole service piece together, and not just have a team celebrating while you feel that you've had things dumped over the fence. So really you need to question yourselves, and are you taking responsibility for everything so that you can change anything? So when you start doing that, you go, well, okay, what do I change? How do I change things differently? And this is where I kind of lead into one of the first things, which is not improving solutions that shouldn't be there. And this is a quote that I found from an AWS conference. I can't remember who said it, but it really stuck. There's so many times that we just try and tweak things that shouldn't actually be there, and what we find is that it actually exacerbates the problem. It makes things stickier and harder to remove, instead of focusing on what we actually need to do to kind of get rid of some of those tactical and make the strategic solutions. We just go, it's okay, we'll tweak this, we'll tweak this, we'll tweak this, we'll tweak this. But those things shouldn't be there. But on the flip side of that, what if actually improving it buys you some more time so that you can fix other issues? Then you're in a bit of a juxtaposition, because this shouldn't be here, but if I tweak it, I can buy myself more time. What happens if spending 1 week on improving it buys you 10? So this is where you've got to have some really intentional conversations around what it is that you've got, the processes that you're looking at, what shouldn't be there, are we improving something that shouldn't be there, and why are we doing that? And if it is really the case that you have to improve what shouldn't be there and the return on investment is worth it, can you edge it more towards the standards where it should be, or can you edge it more towards an exit? One of the ways that I've found that's really successful in doing this is kind of the processes on this slide, in terms of collating all the BAU activities. Hopefully a number of you have a log, but actually measuring the impact to your team. The impact, as talked about before, in terms of putting that revenue figure on, is very difficult, but you can put on time taken, and you can assign risk and impact of error. These are kind of levers that you can use. From that, you can prioritize what you want to tackle, plan some ideas for how to solve it, propose a business case, execute, and then measure the impact. Measuring the impact is one of the key things that you have to do, because you're actually showing that what you're doing is actually making a difference. You're getting some credit, you're getting some respect to do more, and need to repeat. One of the dangers of this list, though, is that you spend so much time in analysis paralysis stage, that you go through everything, you make, well, let's get the full list before we get there, and there's that great phrase that perfect is the enemy of good. You just need to be good enough on this list to get moving. And as much as it pains me to say it, the best example of perfect being the enemy of good was on Saturday, where Scotland were far from perfect. They were good enough to beat England. They got the result they needed, but that South African was pretty perfect. That's a bit of hypocrisy talking right there. Some of you may be thinking, oh, what, having a week of time to improve something? That'd be nice. To which I will say, are you a victim or are you a leader? That's provocative, sue me. Find the time, make the time. It's on you to take the responsibility, but you've got to be disciplined in doing that. Discipline is doing the right thing, not the easy thing. But that's down to you as leaders to take that responsibility. Now, in terms of measuring the impact, one of the things we're talking about is the risk and impact of error. And one of the great things that I've learned over the kind of the last 5 to 6 years is actually about risk and audit, your new besties. There are so many people in this room that will hold risk and audit away, or give them what you think they need to get them off your back so that you can carry on. Wrong approach. Totally the wrong approach. And this is something that I have learned and developed over time. You can actually get a lot of funding for reducing risk. So I'm not just saying use them to your own advantage, but actually build that collaborative environment and don't shy away from them. Work together collaboratively, because what you actually find is it will bring some clarity to your roadmap in terms of how you can actually get yourself out of the situation you're in, not just protect you as a team and protect the company, but actually look at how you prioritize, where you can make changes, and out of appetite risks need to be addressed. Now, what I'm not saying is make everything that you're doing an out of appetite risk so that you get the funding to address it, but it can help you really prioritize, and working alongside risk and audit and having an audit on your function will give you some of those areas to prioritize. Now, this is one of the things that we did at Modular with audit, and it's one of the proudest things that I've done there in terms of understanding the policies inside out and the why, and getting creative. So one of the audits that we looked at was around our change management, and just showing the evidence that we had to ensure the decisions we were making were correct. And what this actually led to was us questioning that segregation of duty piece. Now, in many organizations I've been in, segregation of duty means some sort of developer, engineer, or builder handing it over to another team with a load of text to say why it's okay. And we're somehow expecting that other team to know that this is all good. But we've gone, it's okay, it's segregation of duty, we're happy, we've satisfied the policy. How we actually flipped that in modular was actually asking that question around why. And it wasn't me, it was one of my managers. It took me a while to listen. And I actually created a fairy tale on this. It's a 12-minute fairy tale called The Misunderstood Troll. It's on YouTube, but it's been kind of digitally animated. So if you've got time, have a look at it, The Misunderstood Troll. But essentially, we put the power back in the hands of the engineers. We use tooling from a company called Kosli to actually show that if you follow all of the compliance checks and steps, and you can evidence that you've had many different people acting in the role of checking to make sure things are okay, then that engineer can deploy. You've gone through, you've shown segregation of duty in many different ways. It's not just another team. We've understood the policy, we've got creative. And in 4 years, we had about 900 deployments within modular. Last year alone, we had 2,264. So it's over double what we did in the previous 4 years by getting creative, knowing our policies, having an audit, solving a problem, and delivering outcomes for the company. But it's just how you need to think and twist those things around. Now, moving on to one of the final bits of this piece is managing change without slowing down. Obviously, kind of clear processes. It sounds obvious, but it's one of the key things that I've always found. Processes will enable your team to act within the boundaries that they need to, but they just have to be clear, and they have to understand intent. Intent is one of those key words. What's the intent behind it? A good example of this is obviously a pilot. A pilot will take off, fly the plane, land the plane. But in a situation where she might need to make a decision of aborting a landing, she can do that within the boundaries and policies that she's got. But those policies need to be there. You need to understand that intent behind them and having those clear policies so that your team can operate as efficiently as possible without slowing down to ask too many questions. Then when you've got some of those policies, it's using technology to speed up the process. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is seeing a shiny tool going, that solves a problem. I think I've got that problem. And then you finding the problem in your organization because you've seen a solution and then implementing that. But how do you know that's actually solving the biggest one of your problems? Again, it needs that discipline to actually look at the problems that you've got and then use technology to find the solution, not have a solution and match it to the problem. We too often do it the other way around. And so it's really, because we get excited. It's hard not to get excited. But we've got to just have that discipline to look at those processes. What are our biggest problems? How can technology solve that? Don't be afraid to change your operating model. And this is something I found in the last 5 years. I think I've changed the way that the platform and DevOps team work about 6 times. Whether they've been outside of team, ticket-based, half in the team, half out the team. That's the same thing, for those who noticed. And just working through those different models and constantly evaluating and measuring to see what's working, what's not. Are we getting the right outcomes that we need? And have we really understood the intent? So again, it's not just fence, chucky, ticket over. It's how as service teams can we really enable our customers, which are normally internal teams. And that's where I'm going to go into the enable someone else and don't let people hide behind policies. The great example of that was obviously the DevOps team enabling the engineering team. It took days of a week away from the DevOps team having to deploy because we enabled the engineers to do that deployment. It sped up outcomes for the company because we're looking at, right, actually, what can we do to enable where this is coming from to actually do what they need to do immediately without raising tickets, without raising changes, we always need to raise a change, sorry, without having to raise a ticket for your team to enable that change. But it just requires a different level of thinking and not letting people hide behind policies and saying, no, the policy says this. Yeah, but why? It's there to protect, but what's the intent? What's the right thing to do, not the easy thing to do? So if I can leave you with one final takeaway, again, it's this quote for me. The moment you take responsibility for everything in your life is the moment you realize you can change anything in your life. That doesn't just apply to service delivery, it can apply way out of that. But again, it's down to you to be disciplined, you to take responsibility, and you to really ask yourself, am I annoyed at them, or am I annoyed because I haven't done enough? Looking forward to chatting to you all later on. Thank you for your time and attention this morning, and I think I'll be handing now over to Ollie.